things that strikes me as lacking from Linux isn't we've got packages to replace absolutely everything, in my opinion. I mean, I've said to you before in the IRC, and I've said to any user that I'm talking to, I haven't had a need to look outside of the repos that I'm for Sabian in this case. But there's nothing that I can't do on my machine that anybody else can. So the only thing that I've always considered, and I've got a specific title in mind actually. It's a small program, and it's produced by a company called Yo-Yo Games. Ironically enough, one of the owners of Yo-Yo Games is actually ex-manager of Xbox 360. He had some involvement with that, ironically enough, if he's still there. And I think, from speaking from a sort of home user, father, family man type point of view, the one thing that Linux misses, we've got no question now that Linux is dead easy to install. We've got no issue about compatibility with hardware, and I've said repeatedly, and I think anybody who's tried a live CD will say, it's 99% of the time it works. You pick a mainstream distro, and you can virtually guarantee that the computer is going to be working when you install it. But I think the one thing Linux is missing, we have Python, we have Ruby, we have quite a few different languages and development kits that are available for users. But the one thing that we do lack is the ability for young people to get onto a machine and be creative immediately. And whilst I know you've got Pygame and etc., those and that sort of environment for a young budding programmer, I think things like GameMaker, which for people that don't know what it is, it's a very basic scripted language that allows you to create sort of 2D platform type games, and very much in the vein of a Nintendo DS type style. It's immediately accessible. It allows young people and some adults actually to be very creative, and it's very, very simple to learn. So within about a couple of hours, you're going to be creating things that would take you maybe 15 weeks, 16, learning a language. And I think that's what's missing. And I don't think Linux has a solution like that. I could be wrong, so if somebody knows of any.
The person called, it's an Australian guy, he's a lawyer. He creates this, he works on this thing called PyKids, which Linux today has been promoting, I think, the most among the Linux sites. So if you try to find, his name is Brandon Scott, that's his name, Brandon with an E at the E-N. So if a person looks that up, should be able, just Brandon Scott, you probably will find a project called PyKids, and that's supposed to introduce he says kids of the age of 8 and above are supposed to be able to experiment with code, like very basic things like mathematics, like, some maths and hello world type thing. And it's supposed to try and raise kids to work with a very advanced language, but at the same time a very basic syntax and nothing too complicated. It's not of interest to me personally, but I don't agree with you that kids aren't capable of approaching Linux, because I kind of see the opposite in some sense.
Yeah, I mean, certainly are. In respect to that package, I've had a look at that, and it's absolutely fantastic. And I wouldn't want to detract from that project, because I think it is a great way to introduce young people to coding. And but like I say, for the example I gave, and the reason why I gave it is, a lot of children, I mean, I'm talking as a father now as well, but the one thing that appealed to me about GameMaker, or something similar to that, is the fact that it was very visual. It wasn't, although it was a scripted language of sorts, you also had a drag and drop interface, which allowed you to literally just, you could learn the structure of loops and variables in a more visual way, with a visual representation on your screen, a bit like designing a family tree. And that, to me, was what sort of sold me as it being a fantastic package for children. I mean, this is probably another topic for another day, but it was very impressive, and certainly something that I would like to see a native version. They have just recently released a Mac version, but it does look as if the Linux version is on hold, and wine compatibility is rather poor.
What about the age groups it's supposed to be targeting? Because I know you're a kid, so I probably shouldn't involve families or something in it, but I don't think that GameMaker is it suitable for your...
Oh, no, not that. I mean,
yeah, because I'm thinking, I was just thinking about, I mean, games in any distribution you install of Linux, you have very, very good games on it, very entertaining games, and you have these really nice icons of like GIMP and everything else, and compare it to Windows. I mean, usually you have Minesweeper and you have Solitaire. I mean, that's not for kids. They're not really attracted to that. I mean, I suppose the only thing about XP that was good is the kind of a Teletubby theme type of wallpaper. So they kind of think they see those hills and moles and they think it's kind of like a kid's desktop.
I think my choice that I've just made was more to do with the fact that, after reading the article, I'm desperately trying to find something that I would like to see in Linux. I mean, I find myself now, especially now that I'm not playing World of Warcraft, very, very rare that I even boot up Wine. It's maybe to test an application that I've seen that's Windows only, just out of curiosity, but it's very rare. In fact, I think I could probably remove Wine from my system and not miss it at all. But it was just after that article, it sort of engaged me in thinking, well, what do I miss from Windows, or what would I like to see? And
I think that's probably the wrong question to ask, because you ask a person who's already on Linux what to do. And I think Jack was trying to approach the article by asking what in Linux would actually attract people to the platform if they don't already use that. And I know lots of people who would not actually change because they're used to Office. The first thing they think is, well, you start the computer. We don't think much about Windows. You just kind of go into Word and Excel, and they think that Word is the word processor. That's the only thing you can use to write text, even if all you write is like a grocery list or something. You kind of open Word and you put it in big fonts. Have to get this and that. And for some people, it's professionals. People use the computer professionally. When I say professional, they need their very heavy Photoshop, or they need their design tools, or their video editor, things like that. And that's when it gets complicated. I think these are the people probably the people least likely to move to GNU/Linux very fast, because they have lots of barriers and they have a habitual type of lock-in in place. One of the things, since you mentioned kids, and we haven't touched on one important thing is that the kids are the best people to try and pull into the GNU Linux world, because they don't have any preconceptions, or they don't have any disposals of prior software, and one of the things Microsoft is trying to do by all kinds of means, we probably should do it on a separate episode, because we've gone on for 45 minutes or so. We have to ensure that schools realize the potential and the importance of kids learning how to learning methods. I'm quite concerned, since when I see today's kids sometimes, and I'm quite concerned because they're very status-driven, and they're very much with their gadgets and everything else, but also the kids don't learn how to learn so much. They're very much oriented around brands and products and things like that. So they think in terms of Word and Windows, and the teachers kind of encourage this in a way, instead of trying to teach the kids not how to access the menu item, but how to move the mouse and to draw things, and to use the word processor. What is a word processor, and what is the printer? They don't teach them computers, but they train them to use the software. And this is when I see almost every kid today goes to a school where part of the either they have computer classes, which is usually Microsoft classes, basically Microsoft product classes, or they have a math class, or geography, things like that, where they use the computer. When they use the computer, they could be using something else, or they could be making presentations with PowerPoint. And we have to work on ensuring the next generation is raised on free software, is actually given choice based on methods, and not based on the fact that their presentation will only be openable with Microsoft Office, which they have to buy, by the way. So they have to go to mommy and daddy and ask for them to buy Windows and to buy Office and everything else for them to basically finish the homework. So yeah, that's a separate issue. We should probably close down this segment and try to.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly some great points made. So I hope we'll be covering it in future shows, or certainly in the IRC room at some point as well. What we'll do now, and unfortunately I was not available for this interview, but we've got your interview with Brandon, who's the Fedora ambassador for, is it North America he's for?
He's in Canada, I think.
Canada, beg your pardon.
Yeah. I don't think it has the notion of, before he actually said ambassador for Fedora 14, but I don't think it has this notion of like ambassador for a specific version or for a. I'm not sure about location, but in any case,
Right.
he's located in Canada, which is yeah, okay.
And unfortunately, because I haven't had time to listen to the interview because I was actually looking forward to listening to this, and I had some questions of my own.